All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here today. I am excited. I'm talking to a friend of mine, Brandon LaPier. Am I pronouncing your name correctly?
That's right.
Okay. Hey, Brandon, how you doing?
Good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Of course, yeah. Again, we've talked to you a couple times. Michelle and I talked to you once on our show, New Earth Rising, and then
Mhm.
you came on my show earlier. So the reason we're here again is to talk about Brandon's experiences and some things that may be falling into place for him after reading Tony Rodriguez's book, Cirrus Colony Cavalier, and other things, of course. But let me read your bio real quick, and then we'll start talking about that. Okay.
Okay.
Brandon is a psychic empath, mystic, and healer. He has had mystical, paranormal, and ET experiences his whole life. The many experiences throughout his life led him to discover and understand his gifts and ultimately his personal connection to Creator. Through the many experiences of high strangeness, I can relate to that. Memories of his MILAB experiences began to come through both past and present. And that's what I'm really interested in because I seem to be having similar types of memories coming through in the last 3 or 4 years.
Mhm.
So, go ahead and start sharing if you don't mind how that started for you.
Well, I'm not sure what we covered before, if we talked about this aspect or not, but
Just barely, briefly.
okay.
Yeah.
Um, so I've had these weird military things throughout my life, and I didn't really know what to make of it. Like you might not think anything of it until like you get a whole bunch of other weird things too, you know? So
Mhm.
like when I was a kid, I think I was in first grade. There was this military guy that showed up at the apartment complex. He's like, "Hey, hello." He's like, I remember him wearing all black, and but there was a military uniform, and he like hands me all these toys. You want some toys? They were brand new, like a little toy marine, like machine gun,
Weird.
this little package of Army Man, this little plastic tank, a Marine Corps poster, a Marine Corps flag, and I was just like, okay, cool, thank you. I didn't have any idea why he was giving it to me, but he just showed up and gave it to me out of nowhere and walked out. I never saw him again.
And how old were
I was like,
you? Or he just was
uh,
there as you were a child?
yeah, I was in front of the apartment in the lawn in the grass,
Okay.
and so I must have been in first or I think I was in second grade actually.
Okay. That's awful early to be recruiting, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. Well, like uh, that was like the first weird kind of odd memory I had in hypnosis, though. The first time I was taken in the military goes back to when I was around six.
Mm. Hmm.
But that was in hypnosis, so I just want to clarify that. Um, but I didn't remember that until way later, because I had to get hypnotized for that.
Yeah.
Uh, when I was just out of high school, I was working at UPS, and then like a Marine Corps recruiter showed up at nowhere, and my then girlfriend, broke up with me, and he's like, "You want to join the Marine Corps?" I'm like, "Okay." I was all like feeling sad and sorry for
Yeah.
myself. I got to get out of here. And he's like, "Well, we'll give you a bonus if you leave in 2 weeks." I'm like, all right. So I left, and then at that time I was selling weed at the parking lot in UPS. And I come to find out because I would sell it with the manager there actually. And I come to find out a month later after I left, the whole place was raided.
Oh,
And
wow.
but there's been many experiences like that for me where something happened and I was saved and I was being protected.
So, that's interesting. Sorry to interrupt you here, but what do you think? Do you think they're watching you? Or do you think it's divine intervention or maybe both? But what do you think?
You, that's kind of one of those hard to say,
Yeah.
and as far as like, are they watching me? I get a good yes on that. But then
Hmm.
like, as far as divine intervention, then the other aspect comes in, and what isn't a part of our divine consciousness, and as though it's all
Yeah,
connected. No matter
right.
how weird or strange, it's all a part of the divine. So I don't know. Like I've thought about that very thing though. It's like, is
Hmm.
it, which one is it? Protection? Like which one is it? But there's no reason it can't be both.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
So and then so I started having these ET experiences and whatnot, and then eventually, like when I joined the Marine Corps, I stopped having those from what I remember, like right then. But I did have some other strange experiences while I was in, like telekinesis experiences and whatnot. Like it was happening while I was sleeping around
Hmm.
me, like something happening in my field. And I thought
Okay.
that was strange. And still this day, I don't know if that was something that they were doing to me or that was just something happening through me just because of me.
So when you say
Um,
telekinesis, are you talking about that you are using your mind to move things around, or they are moving things in your field, or can you explain that a little bit?
oh yeah. So I was in an apartment because I just moved down to San Diego to my duty station. I met somebody, I basically moved in together shortly after that, started living at her house rather than on base. And then I was in a dead sleep and she started shaking the shit out of me, trying to wake
Mm,
me up. But I was so, in such a deep sleep that it was really hard to wake up. And I slowly started coming to, and it was a slow waking process. And I remember this feeling like I was annoyed because I felt like I was in the middle of something, which I don't have any words to explain like why I felt like that. It was just that I'm noticing it as I'm waking up.
yeah.
And the cats were freaking out under the bed. And then when I started coming to enough, I noticed that every cupboard in the house was going dig, 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 opening and closing super fast, and all the water faucets turned on. Every
Wow.
faucet in the house was on. So in the kitchen, in the bathroom, the bathroom cupboards, the kitchen cupboards, she's freaking out. And then like the more I wake, the more I'm actually awake, the slower it gets until I'm awake and it stops.
Oh.
When I'm fully awake, it wasn't moving anymore. And I'm sitting there. I remember like just like kind of scratching myself, like looking around, like, oh, that's weird. I shut all the covers, turn off all the water. I sat there for a minute. I'm like, okay, it's done, I guess. All right. And I started to go back to bed. I didn't know what it was. And she's
Yeah.
like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm going back to sleep. What are you talking about? She's like, how could you sleep? I'm like, is it hurting you? She's like, no. I'm like, is it doing it now? She's like, no. I'm like, go to sleep. We'll figure it out tomorrow. She just
Oh
looked
my
at me all
God.
weird.
Did you ever find out what that was in
uh,
hypnosis or anything, or just in meditation? Did you ever find out what was
kind
happening?
kind of when I sat and felt into it. Well,
Hmm.
I had a telekinesis experience later on in life, like during an ayahuasca ceremony where I blew up my closet remotely.
Oh.
And then at that point, I remembered that. And I knew there was some activation, like opening a portal, some activation, something going on through me. I just didn't know. I still don't know the other components to that. Like, why was that happening? Where was it coming from?
Mm.
Were the ETs? Was it just something my soul was doing? Was it the
Hmm.
military? So I didn't know really at that point. So my gifts
Yeah.
started slowly opening up more and more. Like I had a lot of like sporadic experiences here and there, but it started to be more constantly on.
So
I
you
went
were
over,
in the Marine Corps at this time?
yeah, I was in the Marine Corps
Okay.
then. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Go ahead. Sorry.
And then like after the Marine Corps, I started doing contract work. And so I went over to Iraq doing basically electronics work, tech work. And that was another thing too. It's like I had a secret clearance in my job in the military. I had a secret clearance, but when I showed up on base, my folder, they gave me a top secret. Like I already automatically had a top secret clearance. And when I got to my duty station, they were like, "Why do you have a top secret?" I'm like, "I don't know. That's what they gave me. Like, doesn't everybody?" They're like, "No, you shouldn't have a top secret."
Because I make houses shake. That's why.
Yeah. Yeah. So they went and had like my paperwork changed. Like, you shouldn't have that. I'm like, I don't know. So,
Wow.
but that was odd. When I was over there in Iraq, though, I really started working on my gifts a lot. And my mom is also gifted. And so me and her developed a really strong telepathic bond.
Mm.
And I know when she wanted me to call her. I hear this message. It's like, hey, you need to call me. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna call you here in an hour. And then I go to the phone center and I call her, and she walks in the door the moment I call her, and she picks up the phone. She's like, oh, good, you got my message. I'm like, yeah, I got your message.
Oh, that's so awesome. Yeah.
So it really developed that muscle, that psychic muscle in me. So I started playing around with it, and I noticed just without even thinking that people were responding to me verbally when I have a strong thought towards them. I'm
Hmm.
like, well, this is really cool. And so I went to a site where I was doing some work on some of the equipment because I worked on the perimeter security cameras, the eye in the
Hmm.
sky things. Um, so I was working on those, and I was at this Navy SEAL base, and I didn't even think about it. I just started talking to her. I'm like, oh yeah, it's really cool. My gifts are showing up. Like the telepathy has really like gotten strong. And I started explaining some of what was going on, and then I got this strange feeling. I'm like, Mom, I don't think I should talk about that anymore. And
Mm.
she's like, yeah. I'm like, I'm on a Navy SEAL base. I know they record everything. I'm
Yeah.
like, they'll probably just think I'm some nut job, but yeah, I should probably stop. She's like, you're probably right. And then I get back to the main base a couple of days later, and I woke up with a needle mark in my arm. And I was like, well, that's weird. You know, I didn't know what to make of it. But it was when I got back from and I did have an ET encounter when I was over there.
Mm.
Um,
What kind of ET?
uh, I don't know if he was telling the truth or not, but I did have a really calm feeling around it. It was like this shadow being. So I
Okay.
rolled over and I look, and there was this silhouette of a man standing there in the middle of the room. My room was padlocked from the inside.
Oh,
There's
wow.
no way anybody's going to come in, but he's standing there in the middle of the room. And I look at him, and telepathically, I'm like, well, who are you? And he says, I'm a junior officer in the Galactic Federation. I was like, okay. And I was just like, I turned over because I had to process it. I was like, wait a minute, what did he just say? Galactic what? I'm like, okay,
Whoa.
I have to pee. And then I just like I looked, and I was like, I have to pee. Later on, I'm like, I have to pee. It's like that's what I had to tell myself. So I would look back. Okay, whatever. But I look, and then he's gone. I'm like,
Wow.
yeah.
Galactic Federation. Yeah.
Yeah. But was he really that? Was it like, oh, you caught me? Now I'm gone.
Mm.
I'm a Galactic Federation guy. Yeah, that's what I am.
Hmm.
I don't know.
So you felt really calm.
But I felt completely calm. The first time I saw a shadow being, I was petrified. Like it scared the daylights out of me. And
Hmm.
I think I was 8 or 10 then. And I woke up out of a dead sleep and I was walking in the hallway, and it stopped and it looked at me. And I woke up out of a dead sleep and all my hair is standing up. I couldn't blink. I
Yeah.
couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. That one was scary.
Wow.
And it was an eerie feeling from that one. And I remember jumping up out of bed and going and turning on the lights and looking and seeing if anybody was there. If it was my family, maybe it was awake, and like I was just seeing it wrong. But no, everyone was
Yeah.
asleep. Yeah, and it walked down the
Crazy.
hallway where there was no exit, and it's just gone.
I've heard a lot of stories that people who have had ex ET contact and see spirits and things like that well, especially with the ET contact in the space programs, the programs they're involved with, also see shadow beings.
Yeah, I wonder what that is. I have the
Yeah.
feeling that it is a technology that allows them to phase in
Mm.
without, and it's the way that it works somehow. It also cloaks them or prevents them from being seen normally. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah. Would it be negative? Do you feel that they're a negative, or I guess you'd have to go with your feelings on it, right? How it makes you feel?
Yeah, yeah. I
Mm.
mean, the junior officer like seems like he was just doing a job. He was there to check
Yeah.
up and look on something and see what something was going on. I
Right.
remember this feeling like I could feel them up above me watching me. like the
Mm-hmm.
ships. They wouldn't come down there. There was sightings over there,
Mm-hmm.
but they generally stayed out of the war area.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, they were watching for sure. I could feel them.
Okay. You talk about in Iraq.
Yeah, in Iraq.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
So
It's
when I got
crazy.
back, that's really when like the military stuff uh really started kicking in. And I started having these like military dreams all
Mm-hmm.
the time. Like throughout the week, I would have these military dreams. At one point, it got really intense. Um, yeah. So it
So,
started out. What?
excuse me, I'm sorry. So when you say military dreams, you mean dreams differently than what you remember uh having your conscious memory in the when you while you were in the military, right? Just different
Ye-
than what you consciously remember in real time. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, they weren't like some of them were symbolic type dreams coming through, but of me trying to run from the military.
Oh, okay.
So I was always trying to run from the military, and I was doing a lot of astral travel back then, like fairly
Hmm.
regularly.
Hmm.
And it got like it started out okay, but there was one point where it flipped, and it got to where I couldn't astral travel unless I would escape the military first. So I'd go into this dream state, and it was like I was being watched and chased, and they were trying to find out where I was going, which was really strange because I'd never had anything like that up until that point. But I remember like in some of these kind of dream states, I was being taken to a lab and watched in a lab, and then they would put me against other beings and people and make us fight. And they wanted to see what my capabilities were.
Hmm.
And I didn't really know at that time like what that was about or what the reason for that was. But it was odd. I didn't
Yeah.
know what to make of it. Um, and but there was a lot of cool stuff that happened like during that time. But then like I didn't realize what else was connected to it and why these military things were happening. The Greys showed up a lot during that period. They all through my childhood, but they showed up a lot during
Yeah.
that period too.
Same here. Yeah.
Yeah,
They seem to be pretty prominent in these programs.
they do. Yeah,
Hmm.
and it kind of makes me wonder, like going back too. Like that's some of the questions I have is like when I started collecting these memories, because there was that point where I got back from Iraq where everything started happening a lot, but then there was those memories before, and it almost feels like two different programs or two different groups.
Yeah.
Like maybe I was in another group and then they found out about me in this group.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
that's kind
Right.
of what it feels like. One
You've
of the
heard, well,
things,
you know about the 20 and back while reading Tony's books, right? Yeah. And so
yeah,
there's some people have been on more than one 20 and back program, which can be, there could maybe can be a bleed through as well. Who
that's
knows?
that's kind of what I've like after a bunch of recollections, that's kind of what I've come to with things is because I was told that too. For
Okay.
a while, I was really drawn to the Cosmic Disclosure series,
Yeah.
um, and I started watching that, and I started looking at some of the things I thought like I'm very inventive, and I was like, oh, you can do this and you can do this, and then like they started talking about something I was talking about on the show. I'm like, oh, you can use a machine like this using holograms and interface like this using induction. And I was like just thinking about how it would work. And then on the show, they're like, oh, we have this machine. And he starts explaining it. I'm like, I guess I'm not that smart anymore. It's not as smart as I thought I was. I was like, where did that come from? That's
You're
odd.
just remembering.
I was just
Yeah.
remembering.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one of the things that like really made a notable impact was more of a physical experience. Uh, There was a couple of them too, but um, one it was related to somebody I was in a relationship with, and we had a couple times where we had the same dream. In this dream, it was so real, right? It was so real. I'm flying over Alaska, but it looks like it looked like I'm standing there and I'm actually flying, you know? So you're like, it's so real, but you dismiss it because, well, I can't possibly be doing that. And
Yeah.
then we fly up and we're in Alaska and we fly down into this tunnel. And it's a large hangar tunnel. And then there's different military groups in the tunnel. And I remember landing and then we're getting off and like then I was it. I was back in my bed and I was waking up and I looked at her and we woke up at exactly the same time. And I said, I just had this dream that I was flying. And she finishes my sentence over Alaska. I'm like, yeah,
Oh,
yeah. She's like, I had the same dream. Wow.
oh,
Wow. And
that's
so,
crazy.
but that's not even the craziest part. And here's the kicker. I put my hand down on the down. It was the middle of the winter. So it was we didn't have the heat cost a lot in that house. So we didn't have it up very high, no more than 60.
Hmm.
And I put my hand down on the down comforter and it was hot to the touch. And not only was it hot to the touch, but it was perfectly laid over us with no wrinkles whatsoever. And it was even hot on the sides. Down, hanging down on the side of the bed, it was hot to the touch as well. Because I was like looking at, I was feeling it. I was like, what the hell? So they heated it up and they laid it back over us because our bodies were hyperthermic
Oh,
because we weren't dressed. We were in Alaska in the tundra. And
that's nuts.
yeah, so I had a regression on that. And in the regression, we got put on a ship and we were standing there in this trance in our underwear, looking out the side of this ship, and it had this transparent metal, and it looked like glass, and we're standing there. And I think that's what they do on purpose. So you'll have that part of the memory and dismiss it as a dream because you're flying. And so we're standing there with our face against that, and both right together, just in this like zombie-like trance. And we go down into the tunnel, and they take her off in one direction, and they take me off in another direction. I remember getting taken to a room, and they shot me up with some sort of like drug cocktail, and started doing some mind stuff with me. I think
Mm.
it was earlier on, so they were definitely doing some like mind programming stuff.
Wow. So, so you're saying that that's crazy because I had a out of body astral travel experience not too long ago, just last year, I think, where I was flying. I mean, I fly all the time anyway in astral travel, but this was different. I actually
Hmm.
had wings,
Oh.
and I don't know if they were part of me or if they were a contraption. And I was flying, and then I was also on the ground watching someone else fly afterwards with these wings. Were you just flying human without wings, without any kind of vehicle, or?
Oh no, we were on like a UFO, like a
Oh,
ship,
okay.
and they
Okay.
had us against the transparent metal. And so we were standing
Oh,
there like right up against the edge, looking out. So our view is like we're flying, but we're just actually standing there in a trance.
oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It,
Wow.
she didn't, because I was like, "Do you remember the tunnel?" She didn't remember the tunnel. She's like, "No, I don't remember that." So she didn't remember any parts of that, and she didn't want any part of her regression or anything like.
I was just going to ask you that if she,
No, she doesn't want any
no,
part of that. She's like, you keep
yeah.
your weird shit to yourself.
Yeah,
she,
I can't blame her.
yeah, she even saw a UFO with me and had an experience, and she's like, no, I don't want anything to do with that anymore. Okay.
You're too weird for me, right?
Yeah.
I actually was in a relationship that very short-lived, but when he found out how, and it didn't take, I told him like pretty much right away. This was,
Yeah.
I don't know, 20 years ago or whatever. And yeah, he hit the road real quick.
Well, you might as well test the water from the get-go, You're like, are they going to handle it? No? Okay, too hot. All right, water's too hot. See you later.
Right? That's funny. Yeah, that's crazy. So, um, what is it about Tony's book and I want to I also want to hear about your memory when you said at age 6 that something, because I have a memory at age 6 too, where I was taken into a facility through hypnosis. and was there with other kids. So I want to hear if you don't mind sharing about that memory.
Uh, I was on it was a metal table, and I was going down a hallway, and my eyes were closed, and I remember the lights overhead because it kept flashing as I'm going under them. And then I got taken to a room, and in the room there was a bunch of other metal tables, and they were like the roller tables or whatever. And there was equipment around, and I remember there was these three men there with like doctors kind of get up, but there was these three men there observing, and they put this contraption over my body, over the torso, and then they put this other thing over my head, and they turned it on, and it's like every cell in my body started to vibrate,
Mm,
and it started to shift. And I remember it felt very shocking and traumatic in the body. It felt very much like I've never done that before, and it was this force into a gift of mine. Like they were forcing something to be turned on. And I
oh,
remember like when my cells started shaking, another energy came into my body, and it was a mantis being. And then it felt like I shifted into the being. Like my body changed into this being. I think they were trying to get me to channel it or something. I don't know. Maybe that was their intention.
hmm.
But my whole body during the hypnosis session was going like this on the table. It was flopping up and down on the table.
Wow.
So she got concerned and she stopped the session because she was worried about me. I
Hmm.
really wanted to go forward and see what happened. So I don't have anything more after that. But it also it made me think about these other moments in my life. Like I was in a Santo Daime ceremony, and it's an ayahuasca church, if for those who don't know.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, but
It's in
we were
Portland,
doing,
right? There's one in
yeah,
Portland. Yeah.
yeah, we were doing a mediumship and channeling work, and I saw somebody and I saw a spirit go into their body, and they start channeling and moving the whole body, and it was instantly I was like, oh, I can do that. I was like, I just knew it. Oh, I can do that. And my body starts doing this, and something starts coming in. And like most
Wow.
people have to practice that, right? Most
Yeah.
people have to go through this initiation phase, but I was like, oh yeah, yeah, I got that. And it's like I started. I was like, okay, that was weird. And it was like, how do you learn how to do that? I'm like, I don't
It's
know,
the
it just
ayahuasca
happened.
talking.
Yeah, it's ayahuasca talking. I don't know, it just happened. These things, does that happen to you? Yeah, they're
Wow.
like, so
So it sounds
yeah,
like you were trained already.
yeah, that's kind of what I've come to, like
Hmm.
looking at the memories, because the memories predate these other experiences out in the quote unquote real world that I
Yeah.
had, where like these gifts come through that I have no idea where they come from. They just happen. Right. And
Yeah.
so there's other experiences that I had too that kind of tie back to that. And then I was like, well, how did that even happen? Where is that even possible? Talking to some of the other people I know who are shamans, and they're like, we have to be initiated into that. We're trained like through the lineage, like our
Hmm.
like that. There's this whole process to even to do that. Like we get chosen, we find out who has it in them, and then we still have to get initiated into it. Like I don't know how you did that spontaneously. I'm like, I don't know either, right? But
Yeah.
then like these experiences, it starts to kind of shed new light on it and make sense of some of those things.
Right. Yeah. Do you feel that your family, your lineage has been part of this program at all?
My grandfather on my mom's side was in the military, and I
Hmm.
lived with him for like a year or so when I was young. So it was before, no, right around my first memory of being taken, actually. So it could have a connection there. I'm not sure, but it could have a connection there.
Yeah.
And my father's native, but I don't think he was in the program.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's gifts
Yeah.
on that side. But
Right.
I remember looking at somebody else who was doing an interview, and he said they actually look for people with that mix of lineage for some reason, which
Oh, okay.
I thought that was interesting.
It is. Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, totally. Some people say that also blood type has something to do with it. I don't know, but yeah, I don't,
I don't know.
I don't either. But Yeah. So, yeah, I had a hypnosis session, and part of it was remember going back to when I was 6, where a military man came to the house, which I had no memory of whatsoever. My dad
Hmm.
was in the military, and actually, and the military man came and he talked to my dad, and I saw them signing paperwork, but they were like in a trance, some kind of a trance, signing
Mm.
paperwork. And then they came and got me and took me to this underground base, and they brought me in a room, and I was sitting with the other children, and yeah, so I guess it was some kind of a induction thing, or where they brought the kids together to start the programming and see
Hmm.
who they were going to keep and who they were not going to keep, perhaps. Yeah.
Yep.
But, yeah, that was crazy that that memory came up in hypnosis, because I don't remember a lot of my childhood. Do you remember a lot of your childhood?
Uh, I think there's blank spots, and I don't know
Yeah.
if that's normal or not, like, but yeah, I don't know. I remember talking to, like, I met a friend from my childhood like many years later that was like 10 years ago. And I was like, "Do you remember like experiencing like the weird things?" And he cut me off. He's like, "Oh yeah, man. Hanging around you, weird shit always happen around you, like all the time." I'm like, "Okay." Yeah, a lot of things didn't make any sense.
Oh, funny. So let's talk about what started coming together for you with reading Tony Rodriguez's book, because